Opioid addiction is the deadliest drug crisis in American history. More than 65,000 people have died of a drug overdose in the last year alone. That is more than U.S. casualties from the Vietnam War.
The show The Doctors investigates the crisis in a series that they call the United States of Addiction. Here's a preview.
Live in a nation addicted, and only one show is at ground zero to face the epidemic head on.
You've got to tell them the truth.
The Doctors.
If you're not scared, I can tell you I am.
All this month, we're uncovering the epidemic that's hitting the heartland of America.
You have bodies stacked floor to ceiling.
This is a mass fatality event.
I never knew how bad it was.
The causes.
DEA says this is where the counterfeit pain pills are coming across our borders from Mexico.
This is why people are dying.
The fallout.
My lowest weight, 55 pounds.
We're saving lives.
I've got one chance left, and this is it.
One addict at a time.
I have never been pushed this hard in my entire life. You.
The Doctors.
There has to be a way to heal.
The show you can't afford to miss.
Oh, that's intense. Joining us now is Dr. Travis Stork and Dr. Nita Landry from The Doctors. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
On your show, you guys touch on all kinds of medical issues. This is particularly serious, though. How did this series come about, and what is it about?
You mentioned the numbers. I think realizing, look, I'm an ER doctor, and I started hosting the Doctors show 10 years ago, and I was cognizant of the number of prescriptions being written, the ease of becoming addicted, but really over the last 5 years, what you've seen, more and more people becoming addicted, but the reason now so many people are dying is because what you're finding is this black market fentanyl is laced with heroin. 50 to 100 times stronger than heroin. And it's finding its way up the interstates of America into communities that you wouldn't suspect, like Ohio. And the death rate is so high, and Dr. Nita went to Ohio to profile the story, because with people, they can hear numbers, but until they see the bodies, until they hear the stories of families who've lost loved ones, we're not going to really make a change. I think the whole idea here is it affects every single state in this country, and the numbers are mind-boggling.
So, Dr. Landry, you did travel and you met with some of the communities where they're being devastated by this addiction. Yes. Tell us what you discovered.
Absolutely. So basically, we just discovered that the profound impact of this opioid crisis, it surpasses what you would imagine, what the average person would imagine. So, for example, we went to the morgue, and at the morgue, we saw bodies stacked from the floor to the ceiling. And we spoke with people at the morgue, and they told us, sometimes we run out of room, and we have to rent trailers. We have to, ask the funeral homes to allow us to store bodies there.
And all of those people in that morgue had died because of an addiction to these opioids?
Not all of them, but the majority. Wow. So it's the opioid crisis that makes the coroner's office overwhelmed with the bodies.
Mm-hmm. Travis, you mentioned that it impacts every state, but also I think every socioeconomic group. I mean, just in that little montage that we saw all sorts of people, young, middle-aged people. I mean, the one guy looked like he could be an insurance salesman. He just, sort of an average guy.
Well, it's literally affecting every community. It's soccer moms. Yeah. Middle-aged women in many ways are more likely to become addicted, 40% more likely. And I think that's why people are waking up to this, because people want to think, oh, it's someone else. It's not me. It's not my friend. And a lot of times people will miss the cues. The one takeaway I will tell people on this is, if you do anything, let's just say you're prescribed an opiate, which still is needed in many cases. Maybe you had a surgery, maybe someone in your family has cancer. There's a reason for it. But ask, what's the lowest possible dose? What's the shortest possible time I can take these? Do I really need these? And then when you're done, let's say you're done post-op, needing the pain medications, get them out of the house. We're finding that friends are coming over and stealing from the cabinets. Kids are getting into them. A really dangerous thing to just have these meds sitting around in your cabinet.
We've seen reports. In fact, 60 Minutes did a story just last week on opioid addiction and the crisis, and how these fly-by-night pharmaceutical or pharmacies, for lack of a better word, clinics, would order millions and millions and millions of these pills for communities that in some cases had less than 10,000 people. And then we've had in the past doctors who've gone on Capitol Hill who've suggested that these are not addictive. Has that changed now that everybody agrees that these are highly addictive and highly dangerous?
I don't have any friends who are physicians who don't acknowledge that these can be highly addictive. Mm-hmm. Again, you have to be careful because there's still a place for them, but the addictive nature, and then as Dr. Nita saw on the ground, the scary part is people will then go to a cheaper alternative. Ironically, we're sitting here saying a cheaper alternative is heroin.
The cheaper alternative is heroin.
Yes.
So they become addicted to the prescription pain medications, and then they think, well, a doctor prescribed it, this is fine. Become addicted to the opiates, highly addictive, and then because it's cheaper, heroin on the streets, don't know what they're getting, sometimes laced with other chemicals, carfentanyl, which was an elephant tranquilizer. One dose of that, and you're dead.
Yeah.
One dose of that, and you're dead.
But what you say is so fascinating. So if you are a doctor and you prescribe an opioid, because as you say, there may be some instances of enormous pain, I guess, where somebody would need one, and then you slowly try to wean them off. How do you do that without cutting them off so that they end up addicted to heroin?
I think in typical situations, as physicians, we know about how long someone needs to be on a prescription painkiller after a particular procedure. And so as physicians, we do need to be mindful of that and make sure that we are monitoring that situation. In some instances, people are on painkillers for prolonged periods of time, but a lot of times that's managed by a pain clinic, and those individuals have pain contracts, and so it's a regulated schedule. So in instances where the doctor says come off of the pain pills, it's time to come off, or in instances where people got addicted, that's when they kind of navigate towards the heroin and the other drugs. So it's
And as a patient, I'll just add this: now that we've raised awareness, as a patient understanding that they can become addictive, hopefully people will realize, okay, if this says take 1 pill every 6 hours, I shouldn't take 4 pills every 6 hours.
Right.
Hopefully as people watch this show, watch our show, The Doctors, they'll realize, okay, these are potentially addictive, so take them as prescribed and as few as possible. And then by doing that, we're going to develop fewer people, hopefully, who are overcome with this addiction.
Dr. Travis Stork and Dr. Nita Landry, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
Check your local listings to watch The Doctors Season 10 on weekdays.